On Easter Island, we have these huge heads and torsos that are carved out of the volcanic rock. They are called the moai. Some of them that have been erected are 30 feet or so tall, weighing up to 75 tons.
What if everything you thought you knew about Easter Island was wrong? Those iconic stone heads, frozen in time, staring at the ocean, aren't just monuments. Beneath the soil lie full bodies, sacred carvings, and hidden chambers that reveal a story no one has fully understood.
As we learned from our guide Hugo, every moai statue is essentially a gravestone, but with a twist. The ancient tribes here actually believed these statues brought their loved ones back to life.
Eyes that were meant to see, rituals that brought statues to life, and a lost writing system called Rongorongo, all buried beneath centuries of history. This is Easter Island like you've never seen it. A civilization that didn't collapse. It adapted, survived, and thrived against impossible odds. Its people were almost erased, yet their legacy is still alive, still watching, and still waiting to tell its story. And what we uncover on Easter Island might completely rewrite everything we thought we knew about this remote Pacific island. Easter Island's buried secrets. For decades, the moai of Easter Island existed in the popular imagination as disembodied heads. You've seen the pictures. You've probably scrolled past one on social media without even thinking about it. A row of enormous stone heads lined up against the sky, dramatic and eerie and completely out of context. That image became the whole story. And like most things we think we know, it was barely half the truth. Starting in the early 2000s, a team led by Joanne Van Tilburg from the Easter Island Statue Project began systematic excavations at Rongorongo, the volcanic quarry where most of the moai were carved.
This is Rongorongo, a quarry on Easter Island. It's effectively Polynesia's megalithic playground. This is actually where all of the moais on the island were actually constructed.
What they uncovered was staggering. Beneath the ground, hidden by centuries of erosion and soil buildup, were full statue bodies. Some standing upright, some tilted, many reaching 20 to 30 feet below the surface. These weren't fragments or ruins. They were intact, deliberately positioned figures with detailed torsos, arms pressed against their sides, hands resting on their stomachs, and the backs. That's where things got really interesting. Carved into the stone on many of these buried torsos were intricate designs, crescents, circles, lines that might represent canoes or ceremonial objects. Some researchers believe these carvings could be connected to specific clans or lineages, a kind of ancestral signature etched permanently into rock. Others think they held spiritual meaning, markings that activated the statue's power or defined its purpose. Now here's the detail that quietly rewrites the entire narrative. The moai don't face the sea. Almost every statue that was successfully transported from the quarry and placed on an ahu platform was oriented inland, looking over the villages and agricultural land of the people who carved them. Think about what that means. These weren't monuments to impress outsiders or intimidate passing ships. They were family. They were ancestors, literally positioned to watch over the living. The ahu platforms themselves are remarkable. Take Ahu Tongariki, the largest restored platform on the island. 15 moai standing in a row, all facing inland, their backs to the crashing Pacific. In the 1960s, a tsunami scattered them like toys. It took decades and an international effort led by Chilean archaeologist Claudio Cristino to restore them. Standing in front of Ahu Tongariki today, you don't feel like you're visiting a ruin. You feel like you're being watched by something ancient that still has authority. Now imagine being a child growing up in one of those villages. Every morning you wake up, step outside, and there they are. Your great-great-great-grandfather's likeness carved from the mountain, standing guard. Not a memory, not a photograph on the mantle, a 30-ton stone guardian that will outlast everyone you'll ever know. That's not collapse, that's devotion. But the buried statues weren't the only surprise waiting in the dirt. Because alongside those towering figures, researchers found something small, something almost delicate, something that hinted at a ritual life far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. Red pigment and sacred ritual. In 2010, a team led by Joanne Van Tilburg from the Easter Island Statue Project made a discovery at Rongorongo that quietly shifted our understanding of the island's past.
Rongorongo volcano, the birthplace of the Moai. It is without a single doubt the grandest, most impressive place on the island. The Rapa Nui had turned Rongorongo into a vast quarry.
Buried beneath centuries of volcanic sediment, they found carefully dug pits filled with red ochre and hematite pigment. These weren't random deposits. They were preparation stations where pigment was systematically ground, mixed, and readied for application. Someone was making paint, and they were doing it with purpose. To a Western eye, pigment at a quarry might seem unremarkable, but in Polynesian culture, red is sacred. Across the Pacific, from Hawaii to Tonga to Aotearoa, New Zealand, red marks authority, power, and the boundary between the human and the divine. Hawaiian chiefs wore red-feathered cloaks, ahu ula, symbols of almost untouchable status. Maori used kokowai, red ochre, in funerary rituals and on carved meeting houses. Red signified things that truly mattered. Finding large-scale, organized pigment production at the very site where the Moai were carved isn't a minor detail. It rewrites the story. The creation of a Moai wasn't just construction. It was a spiritual event. Someone had to locate the mineral deposits, extract and process the hematite, and know exactly how, when, and where to apply it. A priestly figure, guided by chants and rituals passed down for generations, ensured that every statue became a sacred guardian. The Moai weren't simply images. They were vessels of ancestral power, infused with life through ceremony and color. The nearby Punapau Quarry, where the pukau, the red scoria hats atop some Moai, were carved, adds another layer. These red cylinders weren't decorative, they were part of a deliberate spiritual design. Red on the head, red on the body, the Moai were dressed in sacred authority, much like a Polynesian chief would be wrapped in ceremonial regalia. Each Moai became a living protector of the people, a connection between the spiritual and the earthly. Picture it. Late afternoon at Rongorongo, the Pacific wind sweeps across the quarry. Carvers strike volcanic tuff with basalt toki, shaping the massive stone figures. A priest kneels beside a pit, grinding hematite into fine powder. By evening, the pigment will touch the Moai, and coral eyes will be set into place. At that moment, the stone stops being stone. It becomes an ancestor, a guardian, a presence that watches over the living. This discovery challenges the popular narrative of Easter Island as a cautionary tale of environmental collapse, popularized by Jared Diamond in Collapse, 2005. According to that story, the Rapa Nui destroyed their own forests to move statues, leading to famine, warfare, and societal implosion. But archaeology tells a different story. Pigment evidence, combined with studies of Moai transport techniques by researchers like Carl Lipo and Terry Hunt, suggests a society that adapted rather than collapsed. Moai were likely moved upright, walking into place with ropes rather than being rolled on logs, preserving resources. The Rapa Nui also developed manavai, stone-walled gardens that sheltered crops from wind and retained moisture, along with lithic mulching, scattering rocks across fields to enrich soil. These innovations show ingenuity, not desperation. And the rituals didn't stop. The sacred red pigment continued to be applied. Ancestors were honored. Spiritual continuity persisted, connecting the people of Rapa Nui to a wider Polynesian world. This wasn't collapse, it was resilience. Beneath the Ahu platforms, the story grows deeper. Burial chambers held human remains alongside artifacts, integrating the spiritual and physical presence of ancestors into the very foundations of village life. Each moai, painted red and adorned with coral eyes, became both guardian and relative. What we see on the surface is just a fraction of the truth. Beneath the soil lies a civilization that fused art, ritual, and ingenuity to survive against time, isolation, and external pressures. The discovery of pigment pits at Rongorongo isn't just a footnote. It's proof that Easter Island was a living, adaptive society. The moai weren't relics of collapse. They were symbols of continuity, devotion, and spiritual power. And the people of Rapa Nui weren't defeated by their environment. They shaped it, honored it, and endured. Easter Island's watching eyes then came 1978, and a single discovery at the far end of Anakina Beach changed how we see every moai on the island. Sergio Rapuhawa, a Rapa Nui archaeologist and the island's first native-born governor, was part of a research team excavating at Ahu Nau Nau when they pulled something from the sand that stopped everyone cold. Fragments, white coral and red scoria, broken but unmistakable when pieced together. An eye, a full, crafted, intentional eye, designed to fit into the socket of a moai. White coral forming the sclera, the white of the eye, and a fitted disc of red scoria or dark obsidian serving as the iris and pupil. The statues weren't blind. They were never meant to be blind. They were designed to see. For centuries, the world had looked at the moai and seen empty, haunting sockets. That hollow stare became iconic, the image on every postcard and documentary thumbnail. But it was a lie told by erosion and time. The original statues had eyes. They looked at you. And in Polynesian spiritual tradition, the eyes are everything. The eyes are where mana lives, the spiritual power that connects the human world to the divine. A statue without eyes is dormant, unfinished, asleep. The moment those coral eyes were placed into the sockets, the moai woke up. It became a living vessel. It could see the village. It could channel ancestral power. It could protect. Rapuhawa's discovery wasn't just an archaeological footnote. It fundamentally reframed how the moai functioned within Rapa Nui society. These weren't passive monuments built and then forgotten. They were activated. There was a ceremony, a moment of completion, that transformed carved stone into a spiritual guardian. Think about what that final ritual must have looked like. The statue has been carved at Rongorongo over months, maybe years. It's been walked across the island using ropes and coordinated teams, an act that itself required the cooperation of entire clans. It's been raised onto its ahu, painted with sacred red pigment. The entire village has gathered. Children are watching from behind their mothers. And then someone, almost certainly a high priest or ariki, climbs to the face of the moai and sets the coral eyes into place. In that moment, the crowd is no longer looking at rock. They're looking at a grandfather, a chief, a mother who held the family together through a drought. Someone real, someone they mourned, someone who has just opened their eyes and come home to watch over the people they loved. Can you imagine the silence that must have fallen over that crowd? Can you imagine the weight of that moment? The artifacts found inside the burial chambers tell us even more. The obsidian tools, the mata'a, were precision instruments that required skilled hands to produce. The coral eyes demanded artisans who understood both material and spiritual requirements. The red pigment preparation, as we discussed, required its own specialized ritual knowledge. You don't find this level of specialization in a society that's falling apart. You find it in a society with structure, with hierarchy, with priests who held spiritual knowledge, craftspeople who held technical knowledge, and a population that trusted both enough to spend years of collective labor on a single statue. This is evidence of something functioning, layered, and deeply purposeful. A civilization that didn't just survive, it meant something to itself. But the greatest mystery of Rapa Nui wasn't carved in stone or sealed in burial vaults. It was scratched into wood, and when it vanished, it took an entire world of meaning with it. Rongorongo, the lost script of the Pacific. In 1864, a French missionary named Eugène Hérault arrived on Rapa Nui and noticed something that should have shaken the academic world to its foundations: wooden tablets, covered in rows of tiny, intricate glyphs, figures of birds, fish, plants, geometric shapes, and stylized human forms, all carved in precise, repeating patterns. The Rapa Nui called them Rongorongo, and they were everywhere, in homes, in sacred spaces, held by elders who seemed to understand what they said. Hérault didn't think much of it at the time. Neither did most of the Europeans who followed him. Missionaries collected some tablets. Others were destroyed, burned as pagan artifacts, or left to rot. By the time anyone realized what they might be looking at, most of the tablets were gone. Today, only about 24 survive, scattered across museums in Santiago, London, Vienna, and Washington. Here's what makes Rongorongo extraordinary. If it is a true writing system, and that's still debated, it would be one of only a handful of independently invented scripts in all of human history. We're talking about a category that includes Sumerian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Chinese characters, and Mesoamerican glyphs. That's it. That's the list. The idea that a small Polynesian island in the middle of the Pacific might have independently developed written language is staggering. The writing style itself is fascinating. It's called boustrophodon, which comes from the Greek for "as the ox turns." You read one line left to right, then flip the tablet upside down and read the next line, which now runs right to left, back and forth, turning the tablet with every line. It's a system that requires physical interaction with the object. You can't just glance at it. You have to hold it, rotate it, engage with it. Some researchers believe this suggests the tablets were meant to be handled during recitation, turned in rhythm as a chant was performed. Nobody has cracked Rongorongo. Despite more than a century of attempts by linguists, cryptographers, and computer scientists, the script remains undeciphered. We don't know if it records language or if it's a mnemonic system, a set of prompts for oral traditions that were already known. We don't know if it tells stories, tracks genealogies, records astronomical observations, or preserves sacred chants. We just know it exists, and that the people who could read it are gone. That last part is the one that stays with you, because the knowledge didn't disappear naturally. It was ripped away. The slave raids of the 1860s, when Peruvian ships kidnapped roughly 1,500 Rapa Nui people, including the island's Ariki, its chiefs, its priests, its keepers of knowledge, that single catastrophe destroyed the chain of transmission. The elders who could read Rongorongo died in foreign mines and on foreign plantations. The ones who survived the raids faced smallpox and tuberculosis when they returned. By 1877, only 111 Rapa Nui people remained on the island. 111. Imagine being one of them. You're standing on an island surrounded by the work of your ancestors. Hundreds of stone giants still watching over empty villages. Wooden tablets covered in writing you almost remember. Stories your grandmother used to chant, but you were too young to fully learn. The words are on the tip of your tongue, but they won't come. They'll never come. And there's no one left to ask. That isn't collapse. That's erasure. And there's a critical difference between a civilization that destroys itself and one that gets destroyed. But even in the darkest chapters of this story, the people of Rapa Nui found ways to adapt, to shift, to survive. And one of those adaptations was so dramatic, it reshaped their entire social order. Easter Island's Birdman Revolution. On the southwestern tip of Rapa Nui, perched on the edge of a volcanic cliff above the crashing Pacific, sits Orongo. It's a ceremonial village made of low stone houses with sod roofs, and it looks out toward 3 small rocky islets just offshore. This is where the Birdman cult was born, and it represents one of the most fascinating political revolutions in the pre-modern world. At some point, probably between the 1600s and 1700s, the old system of hereditary chieftainship on Rapa Nui shifted. The reasons are complex, likely involving resource pressure, population changes, and evolving inter-clan dynamics. But the result was the Tangata Manu competition, the Birdman ritual. Once a year, representatives from competing clans would gather at Orongo. Their chosen athletes would climb down the sheer cliff face, swim through shark-infested waters to the islet of Motu Nui, and wait, sometimes for weeks, for the sooty tern to lay its first egg of the season. The first man to find an egg, secure it in a headband, swim back, and climb the cliff without breaking it won. His clan leader became the Tangata Manu, the Birdman.
The people of Easter Island developed a unique way of selecting their leader, known as the Birdman,
and held political and spiritual authority for the following year. It sounds almost absurd from the outside, a civilization's entire leadership structure determined by a bird egg. But look closer and it's brilliant. The old system concentrated power in hereditary lines. If your chief was incompetent or corrupt, you were stuck with him. The Birdman system redistributed power annually. It gave every clan a shot. It required physical courage, strategic thinking, and spiritual favor. It was, in its own way, a form of democratic revolution, a society recognizing that the old order wasn't working and inventing something new. Not with bloodshed or warfare, with competition, with ritual, with eggs. This is the part of Easter Island's story that the collapse narrative always glosses over. Yes, the environment changed. Yes, the palm forests were cut down, and that loss had real consequences for transportation, boat building, and soil quality. But the people of Rapa Nui didn't respond by falling into chaos. They responded by restructuring their entire political system. They developed new agricultural techniques. They shifted their spiritual practices. They adapted. The real collapse, the actual devastation, came from outside. European contact in the 1700s brought disease. Peruvian slave raids in 1862 kidnapped a third of the island's population. Catholic missionaries suppressed indigenous religion and burned cultural artifacts, including Rongorongo tablets. Chilean annexation in 1888 confined the surviving Rapa Nui to a tiny fraction of their own island, while the rest was leased to a sheep ranching company. The Rapa Nui weren't allowed to leave their designated area without permission until 1966. People whose ancestors carved those magnificent statues, who developed what might be an independent writing system, who engineered a peaceful political revolution based on an annual athletic competition, those people were living under what was essentially colonial house arrest well within living memory. And yet, DNA studies and linguistic research have confirmed something remarkable. The Rapa Nui people alive today are direct descendants of the original Polynesian settlers who arrived on the island around 1200 CE. Despite everything, slave raids, disease, colonial suppression, forced religious conversion, the chain was never fully broken. The culture was battered. The knowledge was devastated. But the people survived. The lineage held. The story the world has been telling about Easter Island, the story of a foolish civilization that destroyed itself through environmental recklessness, that story was always more about us than about them. It was a convenient parable for Western guilt, about climate change. A cautionary tale with a tidy moral. But the real story is messier, more painful, and ultimately more hopeful. It's not a story about self-destruction. It's a story about survival against forces that no amount of careful resource management could have prepared anyone for. The wind sweeps across the volcanic ridges, carrying salt and memory. The Moai stand, towering and unyielding, their silent faces etched with centuries of watchfulness. 800 years of storms, tsunamis, colonial greed, and human forgetfulness have passed, yet they remain. Guardians of a past the world has barely begun to understand. Beneath their feet, the earth holds stories we can't yet read. Hidden carvings, secret chambers, echoes of rituals, and voices lost to time. Every Ahu platform, every buried ancestor, every shadowed ridge tells a story that was never meant to be found by outsiders. And yet, there's a thread connecting us to them, a spark of human persistence, of ingenuity, of love. The people of Rapa Nui are still here, standing on the same volcanic soil, breathing life into traditions, language, and art that outsiders once claimed were gone. They carry forward knowledge we can only glimpse through stones and stories. But for every answer we uncover, a dozen more questions rise. Who truly designed these statues? What ceremonies have vanished without a trace? What truths have been buried beneath the weight of centuries, waiting for the right moment or the right eyes to see them? The past isn't silent, it's patient, and it is far from finished. Every shadowed platform, every unseen carving, every unbroken story is a challenge to recognize what we don't yet know and to question what we think we do. Because the more we uncover, the less we truly understand, and the more the world dares to surprise us. So, the question isn't just what the Moai saw, it's what they were waiting for us to see. And when we do, will we be ready for the truth?